Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Ruben. Welcome back, Ayo. Hope you had a wonderful birthday trip.
Good morning, I did. Thank you so much. Morning.
And good morning, Rufai.
Morning, Femi. How are you?
I'm fine. I had a wonderful time watching the AFCON final. I can't tell you how happy I am that Senegal was able to overcome.
I don't have a wonderful time watching the misbehavior of the Moroccans.
Oh.
I don't have a wonderful time.
You see the gamesmanship taking the towel from the goalkeeper so his gloves will be wet. So good.
Watching the misbehavior.
On display. I was so glad that Senegal
Now everybody's blaming Senegal. Why did they walk out of the pitch?
No.
I go back to my analogy. You use madness to cure madness.
Exactly. Félicitations, Senegal. Congratulations. Well, good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what is happening around the world. Well, we are starting a new week with news that US President Donald Trump over the weekend announced that the 8 countries who have been opposing his ambitions for Greenland would face tariffs unless a deal is made to sell Greenland to the United States. Well, let's take a look at those countries. So, as I said, there are 8 of them, and they are Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland. Now, Trump says a 10% tariff on goods from these countries would take effect starting on the 1st of February, and it could rise to 25% by the 1st of June if no agreement were to be reached on the complete and total purchase of Greenland. Now, in response, all 27 members of the European Union convened for an emergency meeting on Sunday. They talked about essentially how they're going to respond. So Denmark itself said it will not be blackmailed. And then you've got the likes of the UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. He held a call with Donald Trump over the weekend, during which he told Trump that the tariffs move was wrong and reaffirmed Greenland as being part of the Danish kingdom. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also said that the EU stands in full solidarity with Denmark and called for dialogue. Now, Trump also says that the United States has been trying to forward this transaction, essentially purchase Greenland for over 150 years. Many presidents, he says, has tried, and for good reason, but Denmark has always refused. Well, that is actually true. Many American presidents, many American leaders have also tried to acquire the Arctic territory. Let us take a very quick walk down memory lane. So this picture, just on the other side of the screen here, this is a picture of William H. Seward. He was the former US Secretary of State, and after purchasing Alaska from Russia in 1867, he first tried to buy Greenland. So to that context, that is what Donald Trump is talking about. That's one of the earliest examples we can have of the US making moves for this territory. Then, if we move on to the Second World War, the United States occupied Greenland after Germany's invasion of Denmark. When they did that, they were able to build military bases and radio facilities there. The US still actually has a permanent presence today at the Pituffik Space Base in the northwest of Greenland. And then when we move on, this is another president here, and this is Harry S. Truman. He too, if we cast our minds back to 1946, 1 year after World War II ended, while Greenland was still a Danish colony, then US President Harry S. Truman secretly offered Denmark $100 million for the island, but Copenhagen refused. Now that proposal, this deal only became public years later, decades later, in 1991. So when we are talking so much about Greenland, the question is, what makes Greenland so special? Why does Trump want it? Firstly, geography. I'm going to show you Greenland. When we're looking at the geography part of it, strictly speaking, it is actually a part of the North American region. And you find Greenland here, tucked between the Arctic Ocean and the North Atlantic Ocean. Greenland's capital city, Nuuk, right here, is actually closer to New York than it is to Copenhagen. About 1,000 kilometers difference, but you can see strategically and geographically it is quite close to North America. Now, its location also offers the shortest air and sea routes between North America and Europe, making it strategically incredibly important for US military operations and missile early warning systems. In addition to that, there are natural resources. Greenland is rich in minerals, including most of the European Union's listed critical raw minerals. And as climate change opens up more of the Arctic, major powers such as the United States, Canada, China, and Russia are increasingly interested in accessing these largely untapped resources. So that is, in a nutshell, what we're seeing in Greenland, why it's so strategically important in terms of geography and minerals. All of that is happening. Let us move on to our next story now. Uganda. Uganda's Electoral Commission has declared incumbent President Yoweri Museveni the winner of the country's presidential election. That means he now extends his 35-year rule. Museveni secured nearly 8 million votes, and that represented some 71.6% of the total votes cast, while main opposition candidate Bobi Wine, he won just 24.7%. Now, Museveni, in a wide-ranging speech over the weekend on state television, thanked his supporters and cautioned against violence, saying the only thing to avoid is violence. He claimed the election, can you imagine? He claimed the election was the most cheating-free election since 1962. 1962 is significant because that was when Uganda achieved independence. However, Bobi Wine, the main opposition candidate, he rejected the election results. He called them fake, and he said that they were essentially alleging widespread irregularities, including ballot stuffing, arrests of opposition agents, and an internet shutdown. Bobi Wine also accused the government of orchestrating electoral malpractice and urged Ugandans to peacefully protest the results. Now, the international community has expressed concerns over the electoral process in Uganda, with the United States and EU criticizing restrictions on observers and reports of violence. The African Union Observer Team also noted issues which include disproportionate use of force by security forces and internet shutdown, but called the vote largely peaceful. Now, the inauguration date hasn't yet been announced. Essentially, there's still this issue with security in Kampala. And of course, the internet remains shut down in the country. And lastly, at least 21 people, unfortunately, have been killed and more than 100 injured after a high-speed train derailment and collision in Spain. Now, the crash occurred on Sunday evening when one train traveling from Malaga to Madrid derailed and careered into the path of another oncoming train which was traveling at high speed, causing a catastrophic impact and derailing both trains. Spanish state broadcaster has reported that, again, at least 100 people have been injured, 25 of them seriously, in the horrific accident, which happened near the Adamus area. Now, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said that he was very concerned by the news, as you can imagine, and rescue efforts are continuing. Let's move on to our newspaper headlines. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. And This Day has a whole host of stories on there. But what jumps out is the lead story, which is reports that Kaduna State Governor, His Excellency Uba Sani, has assured President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of re-election come 2027. He's citing the scale of federal projects in the state, including support for a light rail scheme, major roadworks, and a $200 million poultry project expected to create thousands of jobs. In contrast, former presidential candidate Benga Olawepo Hashim maintained that the APC would be voted out in 2027 despite ongoing legal challenges befuddling the PDP. Also on the front page of This Day, there are reports that Nigeria's Minister of Solid Minerals Development, that's Dr. Dele Alake, has been re-elected chairman of the African Mineral Strategy Group, urging African nations to unite and drive economic growth through value addition in solid minerals. Alake, who was re-elected at the group's 2026 AGM, that's their annual general meeting in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, called for stronger collaboration, sustainable financing, and a coordinated infrastructure to unlock Africa's vast mineral presence. Let's move on to The Guardian. The Guardian reports that Nigeria's removal from the FATF grey list and the EU's high-risk countries register has boosted confidence in Nigeria's national financial system, with the NFIU crediting sustained anti-money laundering reforms under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, the development coincided with the Nigeria-UAE maritime memorandum of understanding, which is set to strengthen ports and logistics. And that is happening while Senator Benga Daniel, who's also the former Ogun State governor, said that economic reforms are beginning to ease hardship despite initial pains. Now, moving on to the Daily Independent, it does report that tightening of US visa restrictions on Nigerians and other countries from January 2026 could cost the United States over $20 billion annually. That's going to hit airlines, hotels, universities, and travel agencies. Now, the paper says international tourism and student enrollment are already declining, with Nigerian travel agents, students, and airlines bearing the brunt as bookings drop, revenue shrink, and global travelers divert to more visa-friendly destinations. Let's take a look at the Daily Sun. Well, the Daily Sun reports that the IMF, this is their lead story, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has warned that rapid advances in artificial intelligence and digital technologies could lead to job losses in Nigeria and other countries unless workers acquire new skills. Now, the IMF says that certificates alone are no longer enough, and they're urging for more educational reforms, continuous reskilling, and innovations, and that's as nearly 40% of global jobs are exposed to AI-driven change, with middle skills ones the most at risk. So essentially, get your skills up. Then the Punch, let's take a look at the Punch. Now, the Punch does report that the federal government allocated just 206.5 billion naira. That's about 0.35% of its proposed 58.7 trillion naira budget, this 2026 budget, to poverty alleviation. This is with over 96% of the funds concentrated in service-wide votes. Now, despite rising allocations to the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry, analysts warn that spending remains inefficient as poverty is projected to worsen, with over 60% of Nigerians expected to live below the poverty line by 2026. Very stark reading there on the Punch. The Vanguard reports that River State Governor Siminalayi Fubara says he's still governor. He's reaffirmed his authority and commitment to peace and security, describing the incident-free 2026 Port Harcourt polo tournament as evidence that River State remains safe despite political tensions. Let's take a look at an African paper. We've got the Daily Graphic of Ghana, and it's reporting that the government has tightened passport security measures to curb abuse by foreign nationals and strengthen the integrity of Ghanaian travel documents. Then, to our UK papers, firstly, we've got the Eye. Now, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is reported to have had that 11th hour scramble to save this UK-US relationship. This is, of course, against the backdrop of Donald Trump's threat to hit countries who oppose him taking control of Greenland with a 10% tariff. The I paper goes on to say that essentially Keir Starmer is trying to align with the United States and the EU, which is preparing to launch a £80 billion retaliatory trade bazooka back to the United States. We'll see if it hits them. Lastly, the Financial Times also weighs in on this issue, and we can see that EU capitals are considering hitting the US with this €93 billion in tariffs, or restricting American companies from the bloc's market in response to Trump's tariff threat. Like you said, Rufai, earlier, sometimes you use madness to jam madness as well. So we'll see.
I don't know what Europe is still waiting for. If he hits you with a 10% tariff, hit him back with a bazooka. But you know, Europe, under people like Macron and the likes, are always lily-livered. So they will play the ostrich, put their head in the sand or whatever they're going to do. I just wait till Trump bamboozles all of them, just like he's going to do in Davos, which I think he's going to do. He's going to talk down on them so much, tell them how useless they are. I mean, how the mighty fallen. But the truth is, see, let me get some facts out there. Number one fact, Trump is lying to say, oh, the threat of Russia is there. They want to take Greenland. They're not taking Greenland. Where is Russia? I wish you could put up a map, Femi. Russia currently has a base at the Bering Sea. Try to map the Bering Sea distance to Greenland. It's about 2,500 miles, about 5 hours via flights. Russia has a right on the Arctic Circle on its own area on the Bering Sea. Russia and China has a joint partnership as regards, signaling, as regards missile defense system and all of that. But that's on the Bering Sea.
So you're over this side is what we have.
So that's on that side, on the Bering Sea. It's got nothing to do with Greenland. Number one lie he told. So please, the truth is, if he thinks he can rule the world and have an hegemony, people should be able to stand up to him and tell him no. And that's why they give him the bazooka. As regards Donald Trump too, in Uganda, that thing... no, that's Trump too. No, that's Donald Trump too. That thinks he can rule the world. You see, the problem with Uganda is that he's going to be the second big hegemon. At first, they had Idi Amin. Then they had a lot of leaders. In fact, they even had like Godfrey Venemasa, who says the seat is sweet, and they had a lot of people. But he came out, he had the temerity to come out to lie to us by saying that this is the most cheating-free election, when he knows he cheated. We can see videos, that's why they shut down the airtime, but the video still came out of how they were thumbprinting or writing or marking him, you know, and they were doing ballot box manipulation and all of that. You see, what I just fear is the future of Uganda after Trump too. Because he will go someday. We have seen these scripts. Hastings Kamuzu Banda, age happened to him, he left. Today, you have a Paul Biya in Cameroon that he doesn't even know when he's in a room and he's farting and people are there. Mm-hmm. At some point, he will still go. So what will happen to the future? Are we going to have another Yoweri Museveni that claimed he was coming to be the liberator of Uganda, or we're going to have a clear head? But this is the sad thing about the democracy all over Africa. And that's why I call him Trump too, because there's nothing different between the kind of democracy he's practicing and what Trump is doing.
Well, we'll see. Thank you.
All right. I think it just shows, unfortunately, the type of democracy that's practiced on the African continent, sit-tight leadership. Yep. He's been president, like you already highlighted, for 35 years. It's going to make you 40 years, having won his 7th consecutive election. But what are the details? Number one is 52.2% turnout, which is said to be one of the lowest, especially with the youthful population. A significant population of Uganda is below 30 years old. And so this could be attributed either to just apathy because of the fact that they do not believe in the process, or the fact that it would have been a fair and transparent election, as we now saw it play out, you know, on Saturday. But beyond that is the future of how an 81-year-old would connect to a youthful population in Uganda. Beyond that, what was the playbook? Very similar to what we've also seen in other parts of the world, in other parts of the continent. Number one is that in some parts where the opposition had strongholds, like in Kampala, biometric voter accreditation materials were not working. And so this meant that they were accrediting voters manually, which of course gave room to ghost voters, which the opposition highlighted. Yes. That was one. The second part was that they shut down the internet, digital space, even though there was a release by the government to say that they didn't, but we verified that indeed there was a shutdown of the internet. What this meant is that the opposition, using an app called YouVote, were supposed to be tallying records of votes alongside, you know, in real time. And so they prevented that from happening. Yes. And of course, people being able to report incidents of vote buying and the likes. And so these are some of the issues that happened in Uganda over the weekend. And so taking it forward, the big question would be, when would we on the African continent get elections right? How would we be able to tackle sit-tight, presidency or leadership? For some Western countries, they are talking about sanctions, against Uganda. Uganda would now be seen as pariah state, even though it might be difficult because of the role that they play in the regional security in that region. However, when would Africa itself, countries on the African continent, speak up against and actually take a position against sham elections like this and leaders who want to sit tight and not give democracy a real chance to survive on the continent? It's quite unfortunate.
President Trump uses trade tariffs as a tool of negotiation and blackmail. We have seen it with regard to other countries, whether it's Brazil or it is Taiwan or it's any other country, or India. And that's what we're seeing being played out in the case of Greenland. He says it is either his way, an easy way, or a hard way, and that is not ruling out military action. By saying that, the other issue to consider is how this plays within international law. In other words, again, a violation of the sovereignty of other countries and also the international rules-based order for which Donald Trump has been serially guilty. Tomorrow, he's going to speak on how can we cooperate in a more contested world, when he is the one who has even made, cooperation impossible. Also, there is a role in terms of what the people want. And obviously, the people of the semi-autonomous region of Greenland do not want the United States in their region. But Trump says, well, you will accept us by force. As to the issue of Russia and China, it's about resources in that region. It's about access, and France and Russia are digging in. Quickly, the main issue about Uganda is not surprising. We had said that that is what will happen in Uganda, that the NRM, the National Resistance Movement, will do the same thing that it has always been doing. Museveni now has 72%. The last time he had close to that was when he had 74% in the 1996 general election. Now he's going to stay in that position till he's about 86 years old, 2023, finally.
33.
What happens after Museveni? His son-in-law is in charge of trade policy. His half-brother is in charge of another Department of State. His first daughter is the one who prepares his schedule. She has now been, I think she's going to be made the governor of the central bank. His first son, Kainerugaba Muhoozi, is the one who is in charge of the military. The NRM itself is already decimated. Down the middle, all the old brigades, old guards in that party have been pushed aside so that General Muhoozi can be in control. The future of Uganda is what is at stake. What else can he offer? He says he's going to turn Uganda into a prosperous country. What he has not been able to do in 40 years. I think Uganda is facing the prospect of oil costs. They have discovered oil, and that's what greedy Museveni wants to supervise until whenever he anoints his son.
Yes.
It's unfortunate for democracy in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Adefemi.